Hello everyone. Welcome. I'm going to analyze a game that somebody played, and they posted this in the chess.com forum for game analysis help. So I was just kind of scanning through the forum looking for a game to analyze and decided to do this one. Some criteria for a game I analyze: I will not analyze anybody's wins. I swear to God, on that forum, there's an unbelievable number of people who are like, hey, please analyze my game. I need help. And it's like they're 1,500 and they just beat a 2,000. You don't need help in that game. You need help in all the games that you lost. It's very interesting, and that's one of the first things I would mention is like a serious problem. If you find yourself posting games that you won for analysis help, what you're really doing is mostly bragging, a little bit wanting to get like some advice on how to have played better, but mostly you're kind of trying to like pump up your ego a little bit. What you really need to do is post those games where you lose, and I respect people who do that, and that's why I'm looking at this game by IreptheWORLD. I believe his rating is like 1,100, his opponent's like 1,200. But for the most part, these guys play pretty well. So we have a Philidor defense. The main move here is d4, but bishop c4 is perfectly fine. h6, now this move I don't love. The point is, I guess, he's scared of knight to g5. But, I mean, I forget what black's supposed to do, maybe c6 to prepare d5 in some position. But when you find yourself making a move like h6 on move 3 in the opening, it's usually a bad idea because you just want to develop your pieces in chess. So this is a good situation for white. And now d4 makes even more sense because what usually happens after d4 is like, let's assume he takes, and then like knight here, knight c3. Let's assume some line like this. All of a sudden, black doesn't need to go h6, so we kind of get a typical line where white has gotten a free developing move. So just a move like h6 is not, I'm not happy about that move for black. Knight c3 was played. Again, d4 is probably a little more accurate, but not the end of the world. Knight c3 is a completely standard developing move. Now is when things start to get a little weird. So there's two normal moves here for white. White has two candidate moves that are serious. Maybe three, actually. Because black has plans of b5. So a4 to stop b5 is somewhat serious candidate. But the main two moves should be, again, d4 and castles. White ended up playing the move bishop e2 in the game, and when you find yourself making a move with the same piece twice in the opening, you have to be really careful. Usually it's not the best move. And there's no real reason to do it. Just simply castle. Black can't go d5 because we can take it. And if b5, we even have an interesting tactical shot here that's worth keeping in mind. Pause your video and try to find it. And by the way, note that I looked at this game super briefly, but right now it's mostly the first time I've looked at the game. I mean, I just went through the moves to make sure it was somewhat interesting. But I'm now noticing we have this idea of knight takes b5. Followed by bishop to d5, trapping the rook. So there's just absolutely no reason to go bishop e2. And really super important in chess, one of the biggest weaknesses that players under 1,500 have is they don't develop their pieces in the right way. And they find reasons to make moves like bishop e2. If you can fix these habits, if you can go into a chess game and just remember the basics, develop your pieces, get your king safe, and control the center, and that's it, and don't be scared of random things that might happen that don't like win your pieces, you will do a lot better. So bishop e2 is, again, like these moves are not so horrible in this position, but they're habits that need to be broken. Absolutely the wrong move. Castles or d4 both make more sense. Castles is the safest choice. Bishop e2 though. b5 was played, and now and by the way, this tactical idea, b5, knight takes b5, followed by bishop d5, there's a very good chance he would have fallen right into that. So a good tactic to keep in mind. Bishop e2, b5 was played, a3, it's probably not necessary. It's not like b4 wins or anything, just pushes your knight somewhere. I mean, you lose time after b4, however, you also lose time when you play a3. So I probably would try to get on without it. Maybe just play d4, but I don't blame you too much for a3 in a position like this. Knight f6, d4 is fine. Knight takes, pawn takes and knight takes was played. queen to b6. So right here, yeah, I mean, I guess we had some inaccuracies at this point, the more I look at it. Again, I looked at this game super, super fast. So bishop e3 is a good move. And the point is, after c5, oh, white can simply take a pawn off. I don't see any reason why this is bad. I mean, yeah, it just looks good for white. I mean, bishop d7, we take, go knight b3, and we've won a pawn. So this is like a tactical issue here. Definitely we want to take that pawn off. Instead, the move knight to f3 was played. But like, at the level of 1200, 1300, by far the most important thing is tactics. Like, okay, learning how to play the opening, developing your pieces is important, but you can't just miss free pawns. Everything else is kind of like secondary to stuff like this, like positional concepts and all that crap. If somebody lets you take a pawn, you need to take it. And that's just priority number one in your chess career. Like, you need to study tactics, and you need to be as good as possible at them. A recommendation I have is buy a tactics book, a pretty simple one. Do the whole book, and then repeat it, and then repeat it again until the puzzles get really easy for you. Just repeat the book over and over until it's like second nature. It's extremely boring, extremely time-consuming, but it will make you very good at tactics. It's much better than doing tactics one time and never looking at them again, because that doesn't quite solidify the patterns in your head well enough. But basically, white had to have taken this pawn. Knight takes is also fine. Actually, I lied. The knight would get trapped. So maybe this wouldn't be fine. I mean, probably we can still escape somehow, like, and then put this knight here. But it's a little bit sketchy. All right, knight f3 was played. Bishop e6. And now another, like, typical mistake. I mean, basically, you have to learn certain patterns and learn certain cues in chess. Number one, develop your pieces. Number two, castle. Now, white's move is not bad here, knight to d5, but it's just, there's no reason to do that before castling. You have to make priority number one in an open position to castle. Like, I don't care what's happening. Just frickin' castle. And it's so simple. Like, if you can just remember that, just develop the pieces and castle, and realize that there's very few exceptions to that rule. And by the way, of course, we can still take the pawn on b5, which is a better move than castling because it's a free pawn. I'm just saying he didn't see the pawn capture last move, so let's assume it's not seen again. But aside from tactics, you don't even have to think about the tactics. What you have to think about is there's no justification to not castle in a position like this, unless you can win material. To choose this move over castling is almost always a mistake at this level. You should just mindlessly be castling until you reach the level of like 1500 at least. So yeah, taking the pawn's the best move, but castling is definitely the second best move. Knight d5 was played, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop moves. And again, you should be castling. b3 is, there's no reason to ever play this move before your king is safe. You cannot do anything too strong unless your king is castled. I mean, there's just a whole huge host of 1200 players that if they just followed these extremely basic chess concepts that are pretty much written about in every chess book and realize that there's not that many exceptions to this rule, they would just get much stronger instantly. You do not mess around before your king is castled. That's it. Castle the king. Forget about trying to do anything else first. I mean, unless you can just simply capture material, like we could on b5, or unless there's a forced win, until you get much stronger, you need to be castling. So b3 was played, a6 was played. Again, you should absolutely be castling here. Get your king safe. Put your rook on the open file. Okay, c4 was played. All these moves, they're just not necessary before castling at all. b4, I mean, probably black should go bishop e7 and try to castle, because that's what you do in the opening. You get your king safe as fast as possible. I cannot emphasize this enough. This needs to be a primary focus for anyone who has, probably almost everyone under 1300, because I see it happen so much. Just, you know, really, you can play the opening kind of like a brainless donkey. You could just develop your pieces in castle and don't pay attention to anything else. I think that would be better than actually trying to like do stuff in the opening. I know it sounds a little weird, because obviously there are exceptions to every rule. Sometimes you will want to delay castling for whatever reason. It's just, those are the exceptions. Until you become a much stronger player, you should just be mindlessly castling. It's like, I mean, I almost always castle before I do anything. Just, you know, just the very large majority of the time. Finally, white castles, and it's a very good move. Bishop e7. Knight h4 looks fine to me. Bishop d7. G3. Oh, I'm sorry. Knight h4 does not look fine to me. I suck at chess. He can just take it. So this is what happened. I looked at the game literally in like 5 seconds just to see if like some interesting stuff happened, and I completely overlooked like everything. So yeah, Knight h4 is a huge mistake again. And it just goes back to studying tactics. I actually don't know what the time control for this game was. Let me look. It doesn't say, so I can't quite tell. But the keys to, like, basically the key to chess is not any deep positional ideas until you become at least 1500. The key to chess is don't blunder your pieces, be good at basic tactics, develop your pieces, and castle. That's it. You do not need to, and you know, other simple things like if you're head in material, try to trade pieces maybe. But aside from that, until you focus and kind of like solve the basic tactical ideas in chess, there's just no reason to work on anything else. Like, that's so important. So much more important than anything else is that you don't make a move like this. So really buy a tactics book. Literally go from beginning to end. Look at the and very important. Don't try to solve every puzzle. This is super important. You should never really spend more than a minute on a puzzle the first time you see it. Your idea is to gain more patterns in your head. So you buy a book, you spend, you know, at most a minute per puzzle, look at all the answers until you understand them, then you repeat the book. You can do like, you don't have to do the whole book. I mean, you can do like 300 puzzles and then repeat those 300 or something. And you're just going to do constant repetition until when you see the position, you understand the ideas without needing any help. And you want to be able to understand those ideas when you see it like a month later, pretty much. So like, you want to look at the answer at some point, and then a month later you look at it and you know the answer instantly because you've kind of ingrained it into your memory that much. Some good tactical books are this book by Block, Combinational Motifs, I think it's called. That's a good one. B-L-O-K-H. Because it's good because he rates the puzzles from like 1 to 10. So you can, if you're just starting out, you can just focus on the 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, stuff like that, and kind of skip the really hard ones. But okay, Knight h4, of course, a big mistake. Fortunately, the opponent also missed it. And now white should just go back. But instead he played g3. Black can mess up the pawns now. Probably be a good move, but instead he castled. And white went knight to g2, which is probably a good move at this point. Pawn takes, rook takes, all good. Bishop f5, bishop g4, all this stuff looks fine to me. Bishop f3, bishop h5. I think the bishop should probably move again. But see, none of these moves are really important. Honestly, white's been playing fine the last 5 moves, other than hanging that knight. Black's been playing fine. Bishop f6. So now white made an interesting choice and kind of sacrificed a bishop. Trying to figure out, like, whether it's a... I mean, I don't think it's a great idea. It's interesting. It's creative. You know, the king is wide open. It's just we only have the queen here. A better move would probably be something like... I would really like to get my knight to f5. Yeah, I want to get the knight to f5. I'm thinking about this move because we have a little trap here. Like, what if black would like to develop his last piece, but what happens after this move? Do any of you see? Pause your video, try to find a good move for white. Yeah, and the answer here is now we can take. And we have a cool double attack on the king and the knight. So, I mean, I would have, and my idea, by the way, behind this move was to go knight e3 to g4. And then bring another knight, another piece into the attack on the king side. Alright, bishop takes h6, pawn takes, queen takes, bishop g7 is good. Queen g5, knight d7. Alright, white's next move isn't great either. Knight f4, the idea is to go knight h5. The problem is knight f6 stops it. What we should do instead is aim to put our knight in a square where the knight can't stop it. So knight e3, with the idea of knight f5. This knight has no way to keep a knight out of f5, and therefore our attacking chances look a little better. Like maybe queen to b4, knight f5, queen c3, defending this knight, this bishop. And it's a little complicated. We can always take on d6 though, at least get a pawn back. So that seems a little more accurate. But again, like all of these little subtleties pale in comparison to the mistakes earlier, where white blundered a knight and where white missed a chance to simply capture a pawn. Now it's getting complicated, and honestly, until you get to the level of like 15, 1600, these complicated type moves are going to be hard to find. Like knight f4 looks natural, just unfortunately knight f6 stops knight to h5. White starts to attack. This is a typical attacking move. h5 and h6 makes sense. Knight h7, queen g4 makes sense. And now knight h5 is an idea. Black plays queen to b4, as mentioned earlier. Knight h5, queen c3, and black is basically defending the bishop here. Yeah, I just don't see anything too good here. This rook on a2. I mean, we could try b4. You know, attacking the queen. The queen can't take because of checkmate. However, black can play queen to d4, and it looks pretty good for black here. So white's attack has run out of steam, but in the game white took this. This is maybe not best. I mean, it makes things a little too easy for... Well, honestly, we should probably take this, because we have 2 pawns for the piece, and after this, we are winning this pawn. The downside is rook b8. Take, 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 and black wins this pawn. So actually, you know, black is probably still winning this position, but it's like a little tricky, because if we can win this, if we can find a way to somehow get this c pawn, black has only 1 pawn left, and it will be very hard to win. So like we can make a move like this, just trying to make a queen. And it's not so simple. Like if rook here, we just trade. And now all we have to do is trade this last pawn for one of our pawns. And rook and knight versus a rook is a draw. So that would have been a better defensive try. But again, it's not the most important thing that happened in this game. Instead, queen h3 was played. Yeah, okay, and black won the queen and white resigned. But so what was the key to this game? Well, pretty basic stuff. First, develop the pieces and castle. This should be like your mantra if you're like just starting out at chess, or you know, anywhere under 1500 pretty much, which is well above just starting out at chess, of course. It's because I see so many players under that level who actually just ignore this rule repeatedly. And it's like, it's so simple. It's all you have to do. Don't think about other things. Develop pieces, castle. Usually castle before developing the pieces. Like the moment you can castle, usually it's the right thing to do above developing a piece. And that's it. Just if you do that, you're going to be right much more often than you're wrong. Secondly, tactics are just like the absolute most important thing for players under 1500, and I'm just sure of this. I've seen enough 1500s games to see them constantly miss tactics left and right. And until you can do that, it's just very hard to get, you know, it's good to learn some basic strategical ideas, but tactics are more important up until that level. Because you cannot win at chess if if you allow your opponent to just take your piece like this. No matter how many strategical ideas you learn, it's not going to help. Fortunately, the opponent missed it. And secondly, you know, this capture on b5 was important to see around here. Bishop takes b5. But so that's it. I mean, that's what I would think about. I don't even care about the sacrifice later in the game that was slightly inaccurate. You know, maybe it worked. It wasn't as bad for white as you'd think, actually, if white played followed it up a little better. But by far the things that stand out to me, because what I'm looking for when I'm seeing 1100s games, I'm looking what kind of moves are they playing that a 1600 would never play. And those are all those moves where white wasn't castling, and it was all those little basic tactical errors. That bishop h6 move, I could see a 1700 going for that. And therefore, I'm not so critical of those types of moves. I'm critical of like the just extremely basic tactic 101 type things. Those are much more important. And always, Tactics Trainer on chess.com is good. What you need to do with Tactics Trainer, though, when you're done with the puzzles, you need to review them the next day, the ones you already did. I think tactics without review is not ideal. You definitely want to repeat puzzles you've already seen and do them again. That's it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you liked this video. And from time to time, I'll just find a random game on reddit.com or on chess.com forum and just analyze it for fun. All right, bye-bye.